There are motorcycles so controversial and so absolutely unhinged that governments around the world took one look at them and immediately banned them. These bikes straight up ignored the rules and obliterated them. Here are the 15 motorcycles so absolutely lethal that they got banned, making every biker mad. We're starting off with number 15, the 1978 Benelli 900 Se. This six-cylinder terrorist had the personality of a neurotic opera singer, having a complete mental breakdown while performing brain surgery with a chainsaw. The Benelli 900 Se didn't just get banned, it got executed by multiple governments with the efficiency of a coordinated military strike against weapons of mass vibration. This demon packed a 906cc inline-six that delivered 78 horsepower through a package that had the structural integrity of wet cardboard and the emotional stability of a soap opera villain. But those numbers don't tell the real story. This machine had a vibration frequency that made seismologists mistake it for minor earthquakes, and physics professors question their understanding of molecular cohesion. The six-cylinder engine delivered power with the subtlety of a mechanical panic attack and the predictability of a psychotic episode. This wasn't just unreliable, it was systematically self-destructive, shaking itself apart with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely enjoyed watching grown men write their last wills and testaments while traveling at lethal velocities. The Se was so committed to systematic disintegration that European authorities looked at the casualty statistics and said, "This machine has a better parts separation rate than most industrial shredders and significantly more casualties than some small wars." Think banning a six-cylinder sociopath was extreme government overreach? Wait until you see what happened when Laverda built a triple-cylinder psychopath that made grown men weep blood. Number 14. The 1982 Laverda Jota 1200. This bike has the personality of a psychopathic bodybuilder who got tired of theoretical violence and decided to build a practical demonstration of what happens when you give civilians access to technology that was previously reserved for medieval torture devices, industrial demolition equipment, and people with active death wishes and comprehensive life insurance policies covering mechanical homicide. The specifications read like a torture manual. A 1,116cc air-cooled triple that produces an absolutely insane 90 horsepower at 6,500 RPM through a package that weighed 518 pounds dry and had the suspension compliance of reinforced concrete. The frame was so rigid, it would transmit road imperfections directly to your skeletal system with the efficiency of a mechanical chiropractor specializing in spinal realignment through violence. This 90 horsepower triple-cylinder demon didn't just get banned from civilized roads, it got banned from existing in the same dimension as reasonable comfort expectations and basic human spinal integrity. The Jota was so dangerous that orthopedic surgeons started advertising their services at La Verda dealerships. Several small nations updated their medical emergency protocols just in case someone tried to import one, and physics professors started using it as an example of what happens when engineering becomes homicidal and develops a personal vendetta against human vertebrae. If that Italian brutality shocked you, prepare for number 13. A bike so treacherous that it got banned after it started seducing riders with beauty before stabbing them in the back. The 1904 Cagiva All'Azzurra 650 has the personality of a beautiful sociopath who specializes in long-term psychological manipulation and mechanical betrayal through the medium of catastrophic suspension failures that would make relationship counselors mistake them for trust issues with homicidal intent. This bike doesn't just break down, it plans your demise with the patience of someone who genuinely enjoys watching grown men question their life choices and commitment to continued existence. The technical specifications reveal the source of its sociopathic tendencies, a 649cc liquid-cooled parallel twin that produced 58 horsepower at 7,500 RPM and 44 lb-ft of torque at 6,000 RPM. all wrapped in a package that weighed 441 pounds dry and looked like Italian perfection, hiding a mechanical personality disorder. But the real killer was the rear suspension, a system that had the reliability of a pathological liar and the structural integrity of a campaign promise. The bike was so committed to systematic betrayal that experienced touring riders, people who trusted machines with their lives for thousands of miles and considered mechanical reliability a sacred bond, refused to ride it without writing farewell letters to their families and updating their insurance policies to cover mechanical treachery. The ban came down like divine intervention, with transportation authorities worldwide simultaneously deciding that some levels of mechanical deception are too much even for people who voluntarily trust their lives to Italian engineering and parallel twin reliability. Terrified by that level of systematic betrayal? If that beautiful assassin got banned for mechanical treachery, number 12 got banned for being too perfect at spinal destruction. Legislators didn't even wait for the medical reports. The 1979 Moto Morini 500 Sport has the personality of a sadistic chiropractor who studied under the greatest masters of spinal manipulation, achieved perfect balance between therapeutic torture and mechanical violence, mastered the ancient art of controlled vertebrae separation, then decided that modern motorcycling needed more orthopedic casualties, significantly more emergency room visits, and revolutionary ergonomic terrorism. The numbers tell a story of mechanical sadism wrapped in Italian artistry. A 479cc air-cooled 72-degree V-twin that produced 44 horsepower at 7,200 RPM and 35 the heft of torque at 6,000 RPM, all contained within a chassis that positioned riders like they were volunteering for medieval torture while traveling at highway speeds. The riding position was so extreme it made yoga instructors file for workers' compensation and orthopedic surgeons start advertising campaigns targeting motorcycle enthusiasts. The Morini didn't just cause discomfort, it committed systematic spinal warfare against human anatomy while making other uncomfortable motorcycles feel like luxury recliners with therapeutic massage functions and comprehensive chiropractic support. The ban was less about safety and more about preventing one machine from single-handedly bankrupting the healthcare system through systematic vertebrae destruction and coordinated nerve damage. If that orthopedic terrorism made your spine ache with pure terror, brace yourself for number 11, a bike that got banned so thoroughly that several countries made it illegal to even think about harmonic frequencies and structural resonance. The 1983 Bimota KB2 has the personality of a supermodel with multiple personality disorder who looked at the concept of structural integrity and said, "That sounds boring. Let's try something more exciting, like controlled nuclear reactions with wheels, harmonic resonance, and a personal vendetta against frame coherence and basic molecular stability." This bike doesn't just perform. It transcends physical limitations, reaching levels of mechanical perfection that make other motorcycles feel like they're still studying basic techniques for structural failure in community college. The technical specifications read like a physics experiment gone wrong. A 1015cc liquid-cooled DOHC Kawasaki Inline-4 that produced 108 horsepower at 8,500 RPM, wrapped in a Bimota chassis that weighed 396 pounds dry and had the structural resonance characteristics of a tuning fork designed by someone who confused harmonic frequency with systematic frame destruction. But the real terror was at exactly 132 mph, a speed that triggered catastrophic resonance and instant frame failure. This 108 horsepower resonance weapon didn't just get banned from public roads, it got banned from existing in the same dimension as reasonable structural engineering and basic frame integrity. The KB2 was so dangerous that structural engineers refused to acknowledge its existence. Several small nations updated their import regulations to specifically exclude harmonic weapons, and physics professors started using it as an example of what happens when mathematics becomes homicidal and develops a personal vendetta against molecular cohesion. Shocked by that harmonic terrorism? Get ready for number 10, which got banned so fast that the manufacturer didn't even have time to calculate the resonance frequency. The 1987 Gilera CX-125 has the personality of a hyperactive teenager with access to military-grade weapons who someone taught to love motorcycles, hate reasonable power delivery with the passion of 1,000 burning suns, and appreciate the philosophical implications of systematic youth elimination through 125cc violence. This bike doesn't just perform, it executes, reaching levels of mechanical lethality that make actual weapons look like children's toys with delusions of danger. The specifications reveal the source of its homicidal efficiency, a 124cc liquid-cooled two-stroke single that produced 33 horsepower at 11,500 RPM and 22 Nm of torque at 10,000 RPM, all contained within a chassis that weighed just 209 pounds dry and had the power delivery characteristics of a landmine with abandonment issues and a PhD in applied chaos theory. The power-to-weight ratio was achieved through the unholy combination of two-stroke violence, lightweight construction, and what appeared to be pure concentrated evil, specifically calibrated for teenage elimination. This 33-horsepower youth Terminator was so dangerous that Gilera looked at their own creation and said, "We may have gone too far this time," before quietly discontinuing it, pretending it never existed, and making everyone who worked on it sign non-disclosure agreements about systematic youth elimination. The two-stroke engine had the personality of an angry demon that learned to specifically target inexperienced riders for the common goal of achieving maximum teenage casualties, minimum survival rates, and optimal emergency room utilization among 16-year-old motorcyclists. If that youth-targeted terrorism made your heart race with pure terror, brace yourself for number 9, a bike that got banned so thoroughly that several countries updated their import laws just to make sure it could never accidentally eliminate their dirt bike riders. The 1985 Mayhem MD250WR has the personality of a German engineer who studied medieval siege weapons, achieved perfect understanding of ballistic trajectories and human launch dynamics, mastered the ancient art of controlled violence through two-stroke power delivery, then decided that modern off-road riding needed more precision, significantly more airtime, and revolutionary rider separation technology that could launch humans with Germanic efficiency. The technical specifications reveal the source of its ballistic precision, a 249cc liquid-cooled two-stroke single that produced 42 horsepower at 8,500 RPM and 35 lb-ft of torque at 7,000 RPM, all wrapped in a package that weighed 231 pounds dry and had the suspension characteristics of a medieval catapult designed by people who believed human flight was underrated and every power surge should feel like being shot from a cannon while questioning the fundamental nature of gravity. This 42-horsepower launch system was so dangerous that Mayhem looked at the casualty projections, consulted with ballistics experts, and said, "This is where we draw the line between dirt bike and human catapult." The MD250WR got banned from several countries before anyone even had a chance to calculate the trajectory, proving that sometimes prevention is better than collecting the pieces. The bike was so methodically violent that it required a team of physicists just to predict landing zones, a PhD in ballistics to understand fully, and riding it felt like being launched by a machine that someone taught to hate ground contact. Love the taste of human terror, and appreciate the artistic beauty of making grown men question their commitment to remaining earthbound. Shocked by that Germanic precision of violence? Get ready for number 8, which got banned so fast that the manufacturer didn't even have time to calculate the launch angles. The 1988 Aprilia AF1 125 has the personality of a predatory modeling scout who looked at teenage motorcycle enthusiasm and said, "This is adorable, but what if we completely ignored everything everyone thinks they know about beginner-friendly motorcycles, reasonable power delivery, and basic youth survival? then built something that makes teenage elimination look like child's play? This bike doesn't just challenge conventional wisdom. It executes it publicly while laughing maniacally at the wreckage of traditional learner bike philosophy. The specifications reveal the source of its youth-targeted lethality, a 124cc liquid-cooled two-stroke single that produced 28 horsepower at 11,000 RPM and could reach 105 mph, velocities that make physics professors weep when applied to 16-year-old riders with learner's permits and comprehensive life insurance policies. But the real innovation was in the handling, razor-sharp steering geometry that demanded professional-level skills from riders who barely understood basic throttle control. The unconventional power delivery made the bike handle like it was operating under different laws of physics, laws that were apparently written by people who believed that teenage survival was optional, that conventional safety limitations were for people who lacked imagination, and that every throttle input should feel like a negotiation with destiny conducted at impossible speeds while questioning the fundamental nature of mortality. If that youth-targeted terrorism terrified you, prepare for number 7, a bike that got banned so completely that several countries made it illegal to even dream about experimental Kawasaki prototypes. The 19M Kawasaki ZX750E Turbo has the personality of a quantum physicist who looked at reasonable power delivery and said, "That sounds boring. Let's try something more exciting, like controlled nuclear reactions with wheels, turbochargers, and a personal vendetta against human survival rates and basic boost control." This bike doesn't just accelerate, it detonates, launching riders into the stratosphere with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely enjoys watching people question their life choices and mortality rates. The technical specifications read like a recipe for disaster. A 738cc liquid-cooled DOHC inline-4 base engine that was force-fed through a turbocharger to produce approximately 112 horsepower at 9,500 RPM, wrapped in a package that weighed 463 pounds dry. But the real terror was in the turbo lag, a delay that could last anywhere from 2 to 4 seconds before the boost kicked in with the subtlety of a nuclear detonation and the predictability of a psychotic episode. The turbo lag wasn't just unpredictable, it was homicidal, delivering power with the personality of a landmine with abandonment issues and a PhD in applied chaos theory. The bike would purr like a kitten, lull you into false confidence with its civilized appearance, then detonate with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely enjoys watching people question their life choices, mortality rates, and commitment to continued existence in this dimension. This 112 horsepower turbo demon was so dangerous that Kawasaki looked at the casualty projections, consulted with turbocharger specialists, and said, "We may have accidentally created something that violates the laws of predictable power delivery and several international treaties regarding boost-induced homicide." The ZX750E Turbo got banned faster than a biological weapon, with authorities treating it like a public safety crisis that someone taught to accelerate with delayed gratification and explosive results. If that turbo terrorism made you question your commitment to predictable acceleration, brace yourself for number 6, a bike that got banned so thoroughly that several countries made it illegal to even mention rotary engines and Wankel technology. The 1975 Hercules W2000 has the personality of a mad scientist who looked at conventional piston engines and said, "This is adorable, but what if we completely ignored everything everyone thinks they know about combustion chambers, reasonable fuel consumption, and basic engine reliability, then built something that makes rotary engines look like weapons of mass destruction while systematically eliminating anyone who dares to understand Wankel technology?" This bike doesn't just run, it consumes, reaching levels of mechanical gluttony that make actual black holes look like energy-efficient appliances. The specifications reveal the source of its rotary madness, a 294cc liquid-cooled Wankel rotary engine that produced 27 horsepower at 6,500 RPM, but consumed fuel with the appetite of a small aircraft and the efficiency of a forest fire. The rotary engine had no pistons, no valves, and no mercy for anyone who expected reasonable fuel economy or basic mechanical understanding. This 27-horsepower fuel vampire was so dangerous that Hercules looked at the fuel consumption data, consulted with petroleum economists, and said, "We may have accidentally created something that could single-handedly cause an oil crisis and bankrupt entire nations through systematic fuel elimination." The W2000 got banned from several countries before anyone even had a chance to fill the tank twice, proving that sometimes economic warfare is more dangerous than physical violence. The Vonkel rotary engine had the personality of a mechanical glutton that consumed fuel with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely believed that petroleum reserves were infinite and gas stations existed solely for its personal entertainment. The fuel consumption was so catastrophically high that it made other thirsty motorcycles look like hybrid vehicles with delusions of efficiency and basic environmental responsibility. Shocked by that rotary gluttony? Get ready for number 5, a motorcycle that got banned so fast that legislators started having nightmares about liquid cooling systems and experimental Honda technology. The 1982 Honda CX650 Turbo has the personality of a Japanese engineer who looked at turbocharger reliability and said, "This is interesting, but what if we completely ignored everything everyone thinks they know about boost control, heat management, and basic turbo longevity, then built something that makes forced induction look like systematic self-destruction while methodically eliminating anyone who trusts Honda reliability combined with turbocharger technology?" This bike doesn't just boost, it self-destructs, reaching levels of mechanical suicide that make actual kamikaze pilots look like safety-conscious individuals. The specifications reveal the source of its turbo treachery. A 674cc liquid-cooled 80-degree V-twin that was force-fed through a turbocharger to produce 97 horsepower at 7,000 RPM. But the turbocharger system had the reliability of a ticking time bomb and the longevity of a mayfly with terminal illness. The boost system was so complex that it required constant maintenance and had more failure points than a space shuttle. This 97 horsepower turbo time bomb was so dangerous that Honda looked at the warranty claims, consulted with turbocharger specialists, and said, "We may have accidentally created something that violates our reputation for reliability and threatens the fundamental assumptions that govern Honda engineering philosophy." The CX650 Turbo got quietly discontinued after Honda realized that turbocharger technology and motorcycle applications were like mixing nitroglycerin with good intentions. The turbocharged V-twin had the personality of a reliable friend who suddenly developed a gambling addiction and started making promises it couldn't keep. The turbo system was so maintenance-intensive that it made other high-maintenance motorcycles look like maintenance-free appliances with delusions of mechanical complexity and basic service requirements. If that turbo treachery made you question Honda reliability, prepare for number 4, a bike that got banned so completely that several countries made it illegal to even mention British engineering and experimental Triumph technology. The 1973 Triumph X75 Hurricane has the personality of a British gentleman who looked at traditional reliability and said, "That sounds frightfully boring. Let's try something more exciting, like systematic electrical failures, oil leaks, and a personal vendetta against basic mechanical function and owner satisfaction." This bike doesn't just break down, it orchestrates mechanical disasters, reaching levels of systematic failure that make actual natural disasters look like minor inconveniences. The specifications reveal the source of its British treachery. A 740cc air-cooled inline triple that produced 58 horsepower at 7,250 RPM. But the real terror was in the electrical system, wiring that had the reliability of British weather and the predictability of parliamentary politics. The Lucas electrical components were so unreliable that they made other electrical systems look like NASA-grade technology. This 58 horsepower electrical nightmare was so dangerous that Triumph looked at the warranty claims, consulted with electrical engineers, and said, "We may have accidentally created something that violates the basic principles of electrical conductivity and threatens the fundamental assumptions that govern British motorcycle engineering." The inline triple engine had the personality of a charming sociopath who would run perfectly for exactly long enough to make you trust it before systematically destroying every electrical component in a carefully orchestrated sequence of cascading failures. The Lucas electrical system was so unreliable that it made other problematic motorcycles look like German engineering, with delusions of British charm and basic electrical competence. Terrified by that British electrical terrorism? If that Hurricane got banned for systematic electrical failure, number 3 got banned for being too perfect at frame destruction. Metallurgists didn't even wait for the stress analysis. The 1980 Hesketh V1000 has the personality of a British aristocrat who looked at traditional frame engineering and said, "This is frightfully pedestrian, but what if we completely ignored everything everyone thinks they know about metallurgy, stress distribution, and basic structural integrity, then built something that makes frame failure look like high art, while systematically eliminating anyone who appreciates British craftsmanship and noble engineering?" This bike doesn't just break. It disintegrates with dignity, reaching levels of aristocratic self-destruction that make actual nobility look like commoners with delusions of grandeur. The specifications reveal the source of its noble treachery: a 992cc air-cooled 90-degree V-twin that produced 86 horsepower at 6,500 RPM. But the real killer was the frame design, a steel trellis that had the structural integrity of aristocratic promises and the reliability of British weather forecasts. The frame geometry was so fundamentally flawed that it would crack under stress with the predictability of political scandals. This 86 horsepower aristocratic disaster was so dangerous that Hesketh looked at the structural analysis, consulted with metallurgical engineers, and said, "We may have accidentally created something that violates the basic principles of frame engineering and threatens the fundamental assumptions that govern British motorcycle construction." The V1000 got banned from production after frame failures became so common that insurance companies started treating them as scheduled maintenance. The V-twin engine had the personality of a noble gentleman who would perform admirably right up until the frame decided to abdicate its responsibilities and dissolve into constituent elements with the grace of a collapsing monarchy. The frame design was so structurally unsound that it made other problematic motorcycles look like engineering marvels with delusions of British nobility and basic structural competence. If that aristocratic engineering disaster made you question British craftsmanship, brace yourself for number 2, a bike that got banned so thoroughly that several countries made it illegal to even mention experimental engines and rotary disc valve technology. The 1976 Van Veen OCR 1000 has the personality of a Dutch engineer who looked at Wankel rotary technology and said, "This is interesting, but what if we completely ignored everything everyone thinks they know about rotary engine reliability, fuel consumption, and basic thermodynamics, then built something that makes rotary engines look like weapons of mechanical mass destruction, while systematically eliminating anyone who believes in Dutch engineering precision and rotary engine efficiency?" This bike doesn't just consume fuel. It devours petroleum reserves, reaching levels of mechanical gluttony that make actual oil tankers look like fuel-efficient vehicles. The specifications read like an environmental disaster manual. A 996cc liquid-cooled Wankel rotary engine that produced 100 horsepower at 6,000 RPM, but consumed fuel with the appetite of a small aircraft and the efficiency of a forest fire. The rotary engine had no pistons, no valves, and no mercy for anyone who expected reasonable operating costs or basic environmental responsibility. This 100 horsepower fuel apocalypse was so dangerous that Van Veen looked at the fuel consumption data, consulted with petroleum economists, and said, "We may have accidentally created something that could single-handedly cause an international oil crisis and bankrupt entire nations through systematic petroleum elimination." The OCR 1000 got banned from several countries before anyone even had a chance to calculate the environmental impact, proving that sometimes economic terrorism is more dangerous than physical violence. The Wankel rotary engine had the personality of a mechanical black hole that consumed fuel with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely believed that petroleum reserves were infinite and gas stations existed solely for its personal entertainment. The fuel consumption was so catastrophically high that it made other thirsty motorcycles look like electric vehicles with delusions of efficiency and basic environmental consciousness. And finally, we have reached the apex of governmental intervention against mechanical homicide. Our number 1. The bike that didn't just get banned, it got erased from existence so thoroughly that several countries pretend it was never invented. At our number 1 is the most dangerous motorcycle ever built. A bike with the personality of Lucifer himself, who got tired of theoretical evil and decided to build a practical demonstration of what happens when you combine Italian artistry, cascade failure engineering, and complete disregard for the fundamental laws of physics, human survival, and basic dimensional stability. The deadly 1976 MC Agusta 750s America. The specifications exist only in classified documents, and the nightmares of test engineers. A 750cc liquid-cooled DOHC inline 4 that was engineered to produce 75 horsepower, but the real terror was in the cascade failure system. A design so fundamentally flawed that one small problem would trigger a chain reaction of catastrophic failures that would literally disintegrate the motorcycle while riding, with components failing in sequence until nothing remained but twisted metal and broken dreams. This cascade failure weapon was so dangerous that the United Nations looked at the test footage and said, "This machine doesn't just break motorcycles, it breaks the fundamental laws that govern reality itself and threatens the structural integrity of the space-time continuum." The 750S America was so apocalyptically dangerous that countries that allowed importation saw their motorcycle fatality rates triple overnight, as if the bike was spreading its curse like a mechanical plague. MV Agusta looked at their own creation during testing and said, "We may have accidentally torn a hole in the fabric of reality itself and created something that threatens the fundamental stability of human civilization." The prototype was so dangerous that it achieved legendary status before anyone outside the factory even saw it cascade fail, with government officials looking at the destruction footage and saying, "This machine threatens international security and basic human survival on a species level." The 750S America didn't just kill riders. It ended bloodlines and threatened civilizations. It's not a motorcycle. It's a mechanical apocalypse that was banned from existence for the safety of humanity itself.